Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow is November 11th, Remembrance Day. The CBC will have special coverage of the National Remembrance Day ceremony in Ottawa. There are ceremonies to be held throughout BC as well. Now, I, as many others, are wearing the somber symbol of the red poppy. And we're asking you, why do you wear your poppy? Who do you wear it for? After 12:30, Brian Minter will join us, and he'll talk about ways to beautify our indoor spaces since you're more likely to spend more time indoors these rainy days. I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. And poppies have been appearing on lapels since the start of the month as Canadians prepare for Remembrance Day. The CBC's Maurice Katz asked people in Vancouver why they wear theirs.
I wear a poppy because I know a lot of veterans, and the poppies are an easy way to honor people who died for us and went to war for reasons maybe that they didn't want to, but they had to for different reasons. And regardless of if you support war or not, there's still human people that went there and did something for freedom and for rights for Canadian people. And so I wear poppies to kind of honor that sacrifice and also the people I know who are veterans and who have worked and suffered for different reasons.
The reason I'm wearing a poppy is for Remembrance Day, to remember the fallen, the veterans that served our country. My father was in the Army, so in World War II, so yeah, it does mean something.
Remembrance in a few days, and we want to celebrate, well, not celebrate, but honor the soldiers that died for our country.
Just to remember the soldiers. I think it's important for her to know, being so young, that she needs to carry that on into the future.
Just remembrance, right?
Not forget.
It was a big sacrifice those guys made.
It's just a symbol of, remembrance, and even also with the fallen, quite a lot of unfortunate, people who are really honorable and even also just who gave a lot for this country has now been long gone, and we sort of remember them for the poppy. That's why I'm wearing it. As the name suggests, it's for remembrance, because we gotta know our history to go forward in the future.
My grandfather was in both World Wars. If it wasn't for those guys, we wouldn't have this country we have today.
Some people in Vancouver describing why they wear their poppies. We are asking you on the open line, why do you wear yours, and who do you wear it for? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Also by email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And yes, tomorrow people will be gathering at ceremonies across the province to honor those who fought for their country. If you are looking for where you can take part in ceremonies, here's a brief list of some of the ceremonies happening around the province. You can take a look on our live stream as well. We have them listed for you. In Victoria, starting at 9:30 a.m., there will be a parade from the wharf to the legislature. In Kelowna at 9:15, a parade from Bernard Avenue to City Park. In Prince George at 10:15 a.m., a parade along Canada Games Way. And in Fort St. John, starting at 10 a.m., a parade will start from the cenotaph and end back at the cenotaph for the ceremony. If you're in Prince Rupert, you can join at 11 a.m. with a ceremony that begins at the Prince Rupert Courthouse lawn. And finally, in Vancouver, the biggest ceremony in the province begins at Victory Square at 10:30 in the morning. We'd like to hear from you this half hour. Why are you wearing a poppy this year? And who do you wear it for? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, we're at bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me to take your calls is Corporal Tim Laidler. He served in Afghanistan in 2008 with the Canadian Forces. He went on to start the Veterans Transition Network and is now an executive director at UBC, helping veterans go back to school. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You started the Veterans Transition Network and you also participated in that program. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. When I came back from Afghanistan in 2008, the project was running out of the University of British Columbia, and it's a 10-day retreat-based program where it brings veterans together in a group facilitated by psychologists to talk about their experiences overseas while they're in the military, but also before that in their childhoods, and helping us understand and link together how our lives, made us a certain way, and how being in high stress environments like deployments overseas could impact our lives now, and had a very transformational impact on me, and allowed us to go ahead and start the Veterans Transition Network, which is the national charity that now delivers that 10-day program.
What was the impact on you from your deployment?
I was young. I was only 22 years old when I came back, so I really didn't think there was an impact on me. But a few of my friends who'd been involved in this type of program suggested I take it. And once I got in there, I saw that, I had suppressed a lot of my feelings to get through the combat times in Afghanistan, right? Where I was doing convoy escort. So we were driving through areas that had suicide bombers and roadside bombs as a danger every single day. Thankfully, my vehicle was never hit, but we saw lots of them happening around us. And I realized to get through that, you have to just push all your feelings down. And when I came back home and moving on with my friends, family, and relationships, it's not a healthy way of being. And I had to sort of relearn how to be more expressive and understand what's going on and communicate it to people around me so that they could better understand me.
That's not easy.
No, it's not easy. It's not easy for a lot of people in life. It's a bit of a stoic culture in Canada still. And, we all hear about the World War II veterans and Korea War veterans. They sort of never talk about the war, right? And I think these sort of programs are really trying to change that. And I learned that by showing it and letting people know what's going on inside for me, it can actually bring us closer. And that can help bring down a lot of the stress and avoid a lot of the conflict and problems that arose for previous generations.
I'm going to ask our caller what they wear their poppy for. And before I do, Tim, what does it mean to you to wear a poppy, as a veteran? And what does it mean to you to see people wearing poppies on Remembrance Day and in the lead up?
Yeah, well, growing up, I had family that served in the previous wars, and I'd always remember them and think of the, traditional older generation veteran, and that's important for a lot of people who have family who served, and I think that's a really core piece. It obviously became a lot more personal for me when I deployed to Afghanistan and came home, and the program that was ready for me was funded by the Royal Canadian Legion, BC Yukon Command, and it had been funded, and it still is to this day. Majority of the Veterans Transition Network programs are funded by the Legion, which gets donations from Canadians buying poppies on Remembrance Week. It's very important. It's helped myself and many of my friends in our transition home.
Has that ability to collect those donations, I seem to be seeing fewer now on the streets. Has that declined?
I'm not sure if it's declined, but the model the Legion uses is it requires volunteers to stand on the corners and put out the poppies. And I think one thing I've learned is it's not just veterans who can do this. Any Canadian that wants to give back during Remembrance Week can go down to the local Legion and ask to take out a poppy tray for a few hours and stand in front of a coffee shop or a grocery store and help promote to get more people wearing poppies and ideally raising funds to support programs like the one I benefited from.
Love to hear more about those kinds of programs and those kinds of supports that veterans do need. And my guest is Tim Laidler, who is the executive director at UBC, helping veterans go back to school, and also founder and participant of the Veterans Transition Network. We're asking you, why do you wear your poppy and who do you wear it for? You can call us 1-800-825 5950 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your phone or email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Phil is on the line now in Victoria. Hi, Phil. Tell us about why you wear your poppy.
Hi, Michelle. Well, I wear it for a number of reasons. Of course, like most people, we wear it to remember, those who died serving our country, and the veterans, and not just the older veterans now. But I think it's really important. That previous caller to think of the previous caller and our current veterans, the younger ones as well, because they've had it's been such an impact on them. But personally, I also wear it for my mother, who was a veteran. She was a nurse in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps. She was in Europe after D-Day and followed the 3rd Division across Europe, and she was dealing with the horrors of war. She was dealing with the people who were wounded and of all countries, not just Canadians, and of course the enemy as well, and prisoners of war. And so, I think of the contribution she made. I'm so happy now that the media is focusing, drawing more attention to the role women played in the Second World War, and not just nurses, but of course communicators and people, all sorts of people involved in decoding and the whole range of things, and that's really important. She was a proud veteran. We went down every November 11th to when I was a kid, and she hated war. She hated war. She hated guns, but she was a proud veteran. So that's why.
Oh, thank you so much for honoring your mother this way, Phil. You take care.
Thank you.
That's
Take care.
Phil in Victoria, speaking about his mother, who was a nurse in World War II, helping to heal people, victims, and as he said, a proud veteran, but someone who hated war. And I want to go back to Tim Laidler about that. What have you learned in your work with veterans about the need for honoring women, people who have not been historically recognized in services and ceremonies?
Yeah, I think it's tremendously important. People helped in so many different ways, and that's why every Canadian who's had family members who've served, who've had friends who've served, you start to realize it has an emotional impact, a trail-off impact on everybody.
Yeah.
I work with an Indigenous veteran at UBC right now, and hearing his stories and how he grew up and what led him to the military and how he's transitioning through. It's been a lot of learning, and you can only imagine some of the previous generations that didn't have that same honoring. It really makes me think as well of the military families who have to hold down the home front while the veterans are off fighting and serving overseas for years at a time. For myself, I was young when I went. Now I'm a father. I have an 8-month-old baby, and some of my colleagues who had young children while they were in Afghanistan, I can only imagine how hard it was for their spouses back at home, taking care of the kids all by themselves for months and months at a time. It just gives me a whole new appreciation for how the family actually serves alongside the veterans in these conflicts.
Yeah, I'm sure, you get that insight. And of course, November 8th, every November 8th, we now mark National Indigenous Veterans Day. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. We are asking you here this afternoon why you wear your poppy and who you wear it for, ahead, of course, of Remembrance Day tomorrow, November 11th. Don is up next now, joining us from Lake Howatson. Hi, Don. Welcome to the show.
Oh, good morning. How are you? Or good afternoon. How are you?
I am fine. And tell me what the poppy means to you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all the veterans listening and the people that were affected by the veterans and their families for what they've done for our country and other countries. What it means for me is I'm here today because I had a father that made it through the war in the Second World War. And, not only was it himself, but his brothers all kind of went in even before they were of age to war. And they knew how important it was in those times to fight for a country that they truly believed in. And it's amazing to see what they went through. They were a time where they never came back. And like your previous guest on the show was talking about, they never talked about when they came back. We had to dig it out of our father to be able to talk about what was going on. it wasn't all fun and games, but there was some good times being across seas and the friendships that they made for life. But they also knew that there was a big reason that they were there for. There was a lot of turmoil, but I have to say that, when my father came back from the war, he met my mom, and my mom was just like the previous guest was mentioning. She was of a family of 10 when the first 4 boys that were born went to war too. So she was the oldest of 10 women in the family that looked after the farm. So the price that they paid that stayed home,
holding down the home front,
the family, is amazing. Yeah. And they grew up to be, tough was not even the word. They were big time tough. So we were very fortunate that all of them came home safe, which is a miracle in itself. Yeah. But again, I think that unless you've really talked to a veteran, you might never know really what the price is that they had to pay to keep this country free. Some way more than others. Some never did come home. Obviously, we all know that. And we can look at war as maybe a bad thing, but again, we live in a free country today because of those that, how many times we've heard it every November 11th, the ones that went and they didn't put judgment on anybody and they just did what they had to do to keep us free. So it's a great time of year, but it's a sad time of year too.
Yeah, it's
so
all
that's
of
really
those
what I wanted to share.
Yeah. Don, thank you very much, and I'm glad you were able to have those conversations with your father. That's Don.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Don in Lake Cowichan, and who's sharing with us why he wears his poppy and who he wears it for. I'd love to hear from you as well. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. My guest, Corporal Tim Laidler with the Veterans Transition Network. And you talked earlier about, the challenges of transitioning back into civilian life and needing to be able to express what you had been through, what you had encountered and experienced. What are the supports that are needed for veterans to be able to do that, to deal with physical challenges, mental health challenges, and are there enough?
Well, unfortunately, I think there's almost never enough when it comes to this department. There's no one quick fix for that sort of career, and physical injuries plague almost every single veteran to one degree or another if they've had a number of years service. The emotional transition back is also not spoken about, right? Being in the military, it's more than just sort of a job you go and do for a bit. It becomes quite often part of your identity as a person. So you're really tied into your mission. You're given like a great amount of teamwork and support and a mission to go complete, and you lean into each other, and it becomes a way of life of continually going every summer like I did while I was going to college and university. Every summer was spent away training in some part of Canada, living on a base. Back here, my home unit of the British Columbia Regiment, spending many weekends and evenings in that unit, in that family. And ultimately, when I left service, I was that all that was gone, and I had to reinvent myself. And I was lucky to find a program so quickly after my service that allowed me to put all that energy into building a charity that helped other veterans. But that piece, you need a lot of groups in society to understand the careers veterans have been through and try and hire them and reintegrate them back into civilian life. They're not going to have the same resume as somebody who didn't do a military service. Some people can join the military without graduating high school, and they're coming out after 25 years. They've been in a senior management or a middle management position in the military, and what would be really meaningful to them is to have a similar career in the civilian world. So as much as our civilian institutions can adapt to hire those veterans in, reintegrate them, I think it's almost 7,000 veterans a year currently leave the military and reenter civilian life every year. So this is an ongoing project that Canada needs to keep attention to and help bring back all the useful skills veterans do bring to the civilian world and get them successfully transitioned again.
Okay, we have an email here. And this is an email from Leah to bctoday@cbc.ca. Leah writes, I wear mine for remembrance of those who have since taken their lives and those who struggle with the aftermath of returning home. To those with PTSD, those who no longer see the light, I see you, we see you. An incredibly poignant email, Leah. Thank you very much for that. And I'd like to note as well the mental health support line, which is available 24 hours a day. And that is 310-6789. 310-6789. No area code needed. That is toll free anywhere in BC to access emotional support as well as information and resources specific to mental health and substance use issues. I'm going to wrap with Corporal Tim Laidler here. What thought would you like to leave us with on this day before Remembrance Day?
I think I encourage anybody who has a family member or friend who served. People sometimes, I find myself hesitant to talk about my experience, if it's in a casual conversation with a group of people around or something, because I feel like I might be misunderstood. But, if somebody comes to me and they ask her 2-3 times and they sort of show that they're willing to put in the time, and I'm like, okay, you really want to know what it was like? It's going to take me some time to kind of fumble through and tell my story. And if you can try and hold that space for a family member or friend to talk about their experience, it's going to help both of you come closer together. And I just encourage people to try and take a stab at it. And it might be emotional, but that's okay.
Might be emotional, but that's okay. And create that space. Really important. And thank you so much for your service. And thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Corporal Tim Laidler served in Afghanistan in 2008 with the Canadian Forces. He went on to start the Veterans Transition Network and is now an executive director at UBC, helping veterans go back to school. And of course, Canadians wear their poppies to honor those who have served. And in some cases, as he was saying, there are Canadians who can volunteer, whether they are civilians as well. They can volunteer to help sell those poppies or stand and give out those poppies for donations to raise funds for programs like his. There are also Canadians who like to create their own poppies and make their own poppies as well. And that's something we're going to hear about now as we hear about a project that has to do with what people are making themselves and putting together into a powerful symbol. Now, the red poppy is a powerful symbol, and at New Westminster City Hall, you can view a sprawling blanket covered with handmade red poppies. And this was started by a group of knitters and crocheters about 5 years ago. Poppies are contributed by members of the public, and there are now more than 2,000 of them. So this is a blanket that you can view at New Westminster City Hall, put together and with collected poppies that have been handmade. And Rena Meajer-Dries is with the Poppy Project, and she's been good enough to join us from New Westminster City Hall, where the blanket of poppies is on display right now. And we can see the blanket right behind Rena at this point in our live stream as well. Hello, Rena. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Good.
And, we've been listening to a lot of poignant calls from people as to why they wear their poppies, who they are honoring. And there are many, many poppies behind you. Can you please describe it and just show us a little bit more of it?
Yeah, so there's the full glory of the blanket. We have over 2,000 contributed poppies by knitters and crocheters in our community. We've in fact expanded it to include some felted poppies, which are made by people who can't knit or crochet. So sort of in Remembrance Day season, starting in September, we've hosted some felt making sessions locally at the Quay or at some of the knitting shops in town. And people can come and make their own piece of felt, which doesn't require much manual dexterity. And then you can cut the felt out and sew a button on and then make a red poppy. And that poppy is part of the display behind me.
Wow.
So we've been doing this for about 5 years, and it's quite a impactful statement, I would say. If you come and look at it, it's about the quantity and the dedication of the people in the community that want to contribute to this.
What do people tell you about why they are contributing?
I think the most common sentiment I hear is that, if those guys spent all that amount of time on the front lines, I can spend 20 minutes and make something. And while I'm doing that 20 minutes of, you know, meditative crafting kind of handwork, I can think about what those people were feeling and what they were experiencing, and I put that energy into the little poppy that I'm making, and it becomes part of the display. So it's kind of a Zen meditative experience. And I think that's really embodied in the final product when you see it.
Very reflective. And what about, I mean, this is at City Hall now, it's been at other places as well. What do you hear from people who do view it and are able to see it up close?
I don't stand by it mostly. Like I just display it, right? So I don't really hear a lot of comments, but when I am here, people do actually, they come and they look at it and they stand in front of it for quite some time usually, because it does have such a powerful effect. I think it's the fact that people immediately recognize that these are handmade poppies and not, stamped out by some machine. So it somehow humanizes the thing and makes it more real and more human. Which is really, I think, a very important part of Remembrance Day, right? It's supposed to be immediate. It's supposed to be about the human cost of this.
And can people still contribute poppies?
Yes, it's an ongoing thing. So we have a website. If you Google the Poppy Project, you'll find our website. And we've got a few. We're working with some of the yarn shops in New Westminster that are drop-off points for poppies. So throughout the year, you can bring a poppy and just drop it off there, and it'll eventually make its way into the blanket. And eventually, when the blanket gets bigger, we'll make 2 blankets or more blankets, or the display will change up as it grows. It started off just as a little blanket, and now it's morphed into this big thing with a train. So as it grows, it gets more and more impactful, actually. Feel free to Google us, send us a poppy. We're always looking for volunteers to help display the thing or to help sew it together, because of course that's also part of the work, is to put the poppies on the blanket. So.
It does look beautiful, just at the bottom of that staircase there at New Westminster City Hall. Rena, thank you so much. I really appreciate, look at that. You're turning your phone so that we can see more of it there. It's stunning. And you're right. It goes on quite a long time, doesn't it? Rena, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Rena Major-Dries is with the Poppy Project, which has been putting together handmade poppies for a blanket installation. You can see that right now at New Westminster City Hall. A programming note, tomorrow morning, CBC Radio will mark Remembrance Day with a special from the National War Memorial in Ottawa. It's 12:33, 1:33 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Eliot, and coming up in our next half hour, Brian Minter will be here with some gardening tips and answers to your questions. That's after the CBC News Update with Karis Hogg.
Thanks, Michelle. Here are some headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. I'm Karis Hogg. The recent increase in COVID-19 activity in BC could be waning. That's according to the latest data from the BC Centre for Disease Control. Numbers show new hospitalizations dropped to 144 in the week ending November 4th. That's less than half of the 296 cases 3 weeks earlier. The latest stats show there's been a small increase in the number of people becoming ill with the flu, but the BC CDC says overall the numbers are still low. Long weekend travelers in the southern interior should prepare for snowy highways. Special weather statements are up for the Coquihalla Hope to Merritt, the Trans-Canada Highway Eagle Pass to Rogers Pass, and Highway 3 Paulson Summit to Kootenay Pass. Snow is expected to begin tonight mixed with rain and then get heavier and continue falling into Sunday morning. 30 centimeters of snow is expected to accumulate. And Port Moody police have arrested a suspect in connection with an incident that officers have called disgraceful. It happened Monday evening when someone walked out of a business at Newport Village with a poppy donation box and fled. Police later identified identified the suspect and arrested him yesterday afternoon. He's a man in his 50s. Investigators say that he is well known to police. And a quick look at the BC weather from Environment Canada. In the Peace region, mix of sun and cloud, high +5. For the southern interior, mix of sun and cloud, high 8. And along the south coast, cloudy, rain this afternoon, high of 10 degrees.
Karis, thank you very much. I see you have a lovely blouse on with some pink flowers.
Yes, thank you for noticing. I wanted to brighten up the day.
Yes, you sure are. And it's also on theme with our gardening segment too. So
there you go.
You planned it.
Yeah, I did. Somehow I knew that this was going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
The stars have aligned, or the flowers have aligned.
Yes.
Karis, thanks so much.
No problem, Michelle.
Karis Hogg in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. And welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us. And yes, it is a Friday. Every second Friday, we have our gardening columnist, Brian Minter, back. And today he has some tips for sprucing up our indoor spaces. Yes, if you make plans indoors, you want your plants indoors too. So you can call us as well, of course, as always, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. And if you'd like to send us a photo of your plant, perhaps to send us a video question, you can certainly do that too. And Master Gardener and Horticulturalist Brian Minter joins me now from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. Hello, Brian. Hi there, Brian. I think our connection has frozen with Brian Minter at Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. Hi, Brian. Can you hear me? I think the connection is still still having some trouble. We're going to try to reconnect with Brian Minter. You're watching BC Today here on CBC and listening to us on radio as well. We're in Chetwynd at 93.5 FM, in Campbell River at 104.5 FM. And you can watch us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. And live streaming as well on YouTube at CBC Vancouver. And we are trying to reconnect right now with Brian Minter. We're having some difficulties with our Zoom connection. Something familiar to a lot of people, I'm sure. So what we're trying to do is connect with Brian now over the good old phone. And Brian, are you there?
I sure am, Michelle.
Oh, fantastic. See, when all else fails, go old school, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing this for a long time, old school.
That's right. Now, you wanted to talk about, being able to bring plants indoors, beautify our living spaces inside.
Yeah, Michelle, basically three things are really important right now. As we move everything from outside to inside, again, checking for insects, and, it should have been done quite a while ago because the change is quite dramatic. But once things are inside, basically three rules. Number one is give them as much light as you possibly can, even though we always say indirect light is great, but this time of year, any light you can get, southwest, northeast, anywhere, give your plants lots of light. Even the days are shorter right now, so they need everything they can get, and supplementary lighting is nice as well. The other thing, Michelle, a lot of people say, I'm going to repot my plant this time of year. The very worst thing you can do. Plants love to be root bound in a smaller container, and so leave them if you want to transplant. And by the way, when you think about doing it, gently knock the plant, turn it sideways, pull the pot off, and see 9 times out of 10, it's not ready. The roots are absolutely fine. So it has to be really, really root bound, but we'll do that in April in terms of transplanting. For the winter, no transplanted right now. In winter watering this time of year, because things aren't growing as rapidly, normally the smaller plants pick up, feel the weight, and if it's light, leave it alone. When you water, warm water would be really preferable. So good drink of warm water, and don't water again until it becomes light. And that's really important. Once a week this time of year for most plants probably would be a lot, but for checking it's good. So lots of light, Run your home a little bit cooler if you can, because when the furnaces come on and when the fireplaces come on, it takes all the humidity away, and plants love humidity. So cooler is better, lots of light, and we're absolutely fine. But the one thing, Michelle, I really want really to enliven our indoors and put a little excitement and kind of fun back in. Forcing bulbs, and this is something really important right now, and that's when we take some of the paper white narcissus, and by the way, Michelle, all kinds of pictures. I made a little bowl to show you on the video.
Oh dear, yes, I know you were going to do a show and tell with us.
Yeah, we were. So the fragrant hyacinths and the paper white narcissus are the two forcing bulbs. Now, a lot of people say, okay, all you do, and take a clear glass so you can watch the roots develop. Never put the roots, of course, where they're going to sit in water. Put some stones, colorful stones, make it look attractive, and put the bulbs on top of the stones, nestle them in, and then bring the water up about an inch below the stones so the roots will go from the bulb in, never sitting in water for hyacinths and the paper white narcissus. But here's the secret. When you do that, all of a sudden, everything starts to grow in a warm house, and you don't get the beauty. You get the leaves kind of sloppy and falling over and say, well, this isn't very nice. The secret is cool. And what we want to do is make sure that we keep the plant outside right now, unless it's freezing, or in a very, very cool location with lots of light. And what will happen, slowly the roots will come, and then you'll find that the bulb will start throwing up a few leaves, and then in amongst those leaves, you'll find the beautiful flower stem. And then that'll come out short and compact, and with that beautiful fragrance, it'll make such a difference. And you can do, the bulbs aren't very expensive, but put them in the windowsill and just enjoy the fragrance and watching them grow. And a lot of people I'll pick up a few dozen of these little bulbs and store them in your refrigerator if it's good, or outside, and then do them in sequence all through the season. So you've got this continual display of fresh flowers and fragrance inside your home. It's such a nice thing to do, but the secret, keeping them cool. Don't let them grow at regular room temperatures.
And give them light.
Mm-hmm.
See, I listen so closely.
You are good.
Brian Mincher is with me, who is always with us every second Friday, of course, here on BC Today. As always, he is taking your questions, always has lots of wonderful tips, taking us through season by season. So you can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone to get through with your question for Brian Mincher. And Dale is up first at Mill Bay. Hi, Dale.
Hi there. Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
I've got a miniature lemon tree, which we planted in our greenhouse in the spring. And I'm not sure what to do with it now that we're getting into the colder weather. What do you recommend for winterizing this little guy?
Good. Dale, a couple of things we have in our favor. As soon as we get near Christmas, we're supposed to have the El Nino currents kick in, and so I think we're not going to be as cold as last year. So that's a plus. But do you have any heat in your greenhouse at all?
No, actually. But I could put a small, I've got one of those little oil heaters, the radiant ones.
If you can do that, Dale, all I want you to do is keep your citrus from freezing. They do not do well. Citrus just have a terrible time inside our homes over the wintertime. They drop most of the leaves and so on. But if you can leave that plant in the greenhouse, and we keep ours cold, maybe 5 degrees, 4 degrees at night, and they're absolutely perfect. They actually start developing buds. They do so much better, but just prevent it from freezing. And Dale, sometimes if it's not a big greenhouse, you could line the inside of your greenhouse with bubble poly. That makes a huge difference in terms of, the amount of air that comes in, the cold air in particular. And just for those cool nights, if you could put that heater on, it is so worthwhile. The plant will respond beautifully, and it's the way to go. So if you can do that and prevent it from freezing, it's great, Dale.
Okay, I was just curious. That sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you so well. We've done it for years.
Okay.
Tried and true. Dale, thank you very much. So a couple of options there for you when it comes to making sure that your lemon tree does well in the greenhouse over the winter. And again, our number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And, it is that time of year. We are getting close to Christmas. So I think we're getting some questions about that now. Cody is joining us from Trail. Hello, Cody.
Good afternoon, Michelle, and good afternoon, Brian.
Hi, Cody.
How are you?
Hello. Yeah, we're doing well.
I'm enjoying. I enjoy the coverage on YouTube, Michelle. I catch you whenever I can.
Fantastic, Cody.
I don't always have a chance to listen to my radio, so it's very good that you have gotten into.
And now you've got all these options, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, Brian, my question for you is about buying poinsettias. What kind? When you go to like a local garden center or like the big box stores like Walmart or Home Depot or anywhere that have poinsettias, what kind are you looking for, and what are some of what are your best tips for those of us who are amateur horticulturalists, not green thumbs, that we can use to protect the plants? And can we plant them outside, or do we have to keep them indoors in like a cool space with like a blanket around it, or like in Dale's case with a heater? And I also, if Dale is still listening, or if he's listening, and about the lemon tree, the other thing is you might want to wrap like maybe a blanket around it, like in the winter.
Okay, Cody. Yeah, sounds like you do have a bit of a green thumb there. Thank you very much. So, Brian, I imagine people are wondering this. We're going to try and get our poinsettias nice and early. Any tips for choosing and caring for them?
Yeah, and Cody, good question, because they're available for sale right now. A lot of the growers in British Columbia shade them early to make sure that the poinsettias are ready for about mid-November. So you're going to see them in stores already. And very good question, Cody. Number one is whatever color you're looking for. The new varieties of poinsettias today are more resilient than they ever have been. So they're pretty easy. But look for whatever color you like. Look for the intensity of color. If something is faded out and just doesn't have the richness of color, I would avoid it. So the color is certainly one thing in the bracts that we're talking about. The second thing I always watch is very, very important, the flower buds in the center. If they're green, they're very, very tiny little green buds. But if they're opening and you see them actually starting to turn yellow and get little anthers inside them, it means it's an older plant. It's been around for a little bit. So always buy them with the tight buds in the center and the good color in the bracts. And really that's all I would take a look at, because, and of course, in terms of care, once they're inside, they hate being overwatered. Feel the pot. If it's light, give it a good drink of warm water. If it's heavy, leave it alone. And unless you live in Mexico or Southern California, Tony, they're an indoor plant. And but for the summertime, yes, we could always plant them out when it's warm. Probably in June till I would say probably late August is what their time frame outside. But it's more of a pain than anything. And the other thing is just watch your watering and beside a window to keep the intensity of the color in those bracts. And that's all there is to it. They really are easy to care for, and so not like the old days. They're wonderful today.
Cody, thank you so much. Asking the question on everyone's minds as we head into the holiday season. Thanks so much. Nice to hear from you again, Cody. You take care, okay? Alexander is up next now in Surrey. Hi, Alexander.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for calling in. What's your question for Brian Minter?
Well, we have a 38-year-old weeping fig tree that sits in a southwest corner window. It's got south and west exposure. And over the last couple of months, the leaves have gone brown slowly. And you read online, not enough water, too much water. So, it's such a long-lived tree. I want to make sure that we can rescue it, and more leaves go brown every day. So any advice would be appreciated.
Yeah, conflicting information online.
Yeah, Alex, one thing I do want to ask you, is it quite root-bound in the pot it's in? And what size pot? Is it in a 14 or 18-inch pot, something like that?
It's pretty root bound, and
that's a good thing.
The pot is on the larger side. I wouldn't know the inches offhand, but like a couple feet across.
Oh, that's a good size. Yeah, that's great. Okay, now here you've answered the question already. Because it's so root bound, normally we're just talking about watering. You don't do as much this time of year. When you have a plant that's that old and that root bound, Alexander, you need to water it at least once a week with warm water. And Alex, when you water, really soak it, because that water is not going to go and sit in the soil. It's going to go right through the plant. So really good watering at least once a week at this time of year would be absolutely great. The second thing is, I'm assuming Alexander is getting lots of light right now, indirect or direct light. Which one is it getting?
It's getting direct light. We can close the shades on the window. They kind of are about halfway open most of the day.
Yeah, because where the sun is down at a lower angle right now, I'd be inclined to let it get all the light it possibly can at this time of year. So no more shades. Your indirect sun, as we talked about, is absolutely fine. The watering is always the key issue. In my opinion, if it's getting brown, it's not. You're not getting enough water to it. I think we need to increase the water. And the second thing is, look at the very tips of the new growth. At every branch on the very tips, look at the new growth. If a new growth is beginning to open up, it may have had a time later when it's got a problem. But if you see new growth happening in the very tips of the plant, that's a good sign. It means that it's still growing and wanting to, whatever happened. Maybe it was with the intensity of the sun over the summertime that was getting indirect light. Maybe it got burnt a little bit on the leaves. That can happen. But I think if you check the new growth on top, everything is going to be okay. There's no problem at all. Whatever happened, those leaves will fall off and be replaced by new ones. So it's really a watering issue. In terms of feeding this time of year, Alexander, no. I would wait, honestly, until we get back into late March, April, and then 2020, we always recommend that. It's a granular feed. You mix with water so it's soluble. And I would feed weekly because it really brings it back beautifully. So I think you're going to be okay. Check the tips, and if it's good, you're fine. But more water.
Thank you very much. Yeah, lots of little green tips here and there. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some recovery.
There you go.
Yeah, best sign ever. Thank you.
Good sign. Alexander, thank you very much. That closes the case on that after all your online research, I hope. Thanks so much for the question about your weeping fig. Jenna is up next now with a question for Brian Minter, calling us from Vancouver. Hi, Jenna. Welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Hi.
My question is I bought a Datura this spring, and it had done famously in its pot, its grower pot, but now I don't know what to do with it, that it's getting colder.
Okay. Yeah, again, Jenna, thank you for answering the question. There's many people in the same situation. What I would do right now is strip every leaf off that plant. They get whitefly very easily. They get spider mites very easily. The Daturas are just like that. So take every leaf off the plant, just leaving the stems. Bring it indoors beside the coolest room you have, beside a window, and just let it sit there. And Jenna, in terms of watering, just keep it moist. When they go dormant in the wintertime with the leaves off, they can sit a little more dry than you actually would think. They're fine. But after being inside for about 6 weeks or so, you'll see new growth coming. Let it develop, because it's new growth. It's opening in a new environment, and it's going to be absolutely fine. So basically, take the leaves off, bring it inside, keep it just moist with lots of light, and I think you'll be very delighted with how it's going to turn out.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jenna.
Thanks for the call, Jenna. And sounds like you'll have a great result when we get to next spring. And again, our numbers, if you want to get your question into Brian Minter, it's 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We have just about 5 minutes left with Brian here. And Jenny wrote us an email. Speaking of Christmas questions, is there anything I can do to promote an extra good year of blossoms on my Christmas cactus?
Oh, gosh, that was the tip of my tongue. Jenny, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Because a lot of folks just don't know this. The secret to getting blooms is to spark the bud set on all the tips of the plants. And so that means keeping it cool. When I say cool, I'm saying really cool, 10, 12 degrees. Okay. If you can get a room in your home or someplace with lots of light and keep it cool, down to those temperatures, that's when that sparks the bud initiation. And once that happens, then everything's really going to be okay. Now, remember, most of these cacti came from a rainforest near about 200 miles from, the capital of Brazil, and they love to be misted. They want to have the soil just moist because it is a cacti, but it's a rainforest one, so mist them with warm water. They absolutely love that. It makes the blossoms open more beautifully as well. And by the way, for those who've got them, the buds are finished and whatever, keep treating it the same way because the new varieties of zygocactus will tend to bloom again. But there's a few things about the Christmas or zygocactus, as we call them, and they're kind of fun to have.
That is fun. And Jenny, thank you very much. I find it fun to mist my plants. I like that action. It feels there's something very therapeutic about it. Thank you for that.
For us or the plants, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, it helps.
We don't have time, Brian. Ron is writing us, there's a mountain ash tree on city property behind my place, and it overhangs onto my backyard. Now, the tree has red berries on it. Every year, the berries did not fall from the tree, but were eaten by birds in spring. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, they normally eat this time of year, birds essentially, and by the way, there's so many new varieties of sorghum, like all over the map, and they are quite beautiful. And reading in a British gardening magazine that they are, in fact, one of the most resilient climate change trees we, could possibly have. So keep that one in mind. Now, it's food for the birds. It really is. And the old joke that we have is the robins who eat them in the fall when the berries are soft and ripe, they kind of mature a little bit. It's almost like an alcohol thing for them. So the birds, get a little high, doing the eating in the fall. But it is genuinely, they're not poisonous. It's food for birds, and that's really why that tree is really quite important.
Okay, so not a problem at all there.
Not at all.
Doesn't sound like. Ron, thank you very much. And Brian, thank you as always.
I'm so sorry we couldn't show you. I really did a beautiful bouquet for you. So,
you know what? Why don't you send us a picture and we'll post it next time?
Okay, sure will.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about
Michelle.
that too. Thank you so much. You have a great weekend, okay?
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Brian Minter joining us from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. He'll be back in a couple of weeks here on the show. And that is it for BC Today for this Friday afternoon. Thanks to our team here on the show, Rachel Adams, Melody Jacobson, George Baker, Bradley Stewart, Mel Carter, Mashid Hadi, and Greg Kisser. Thanks as well to Amber Parmar, Brenda Kilpatrick, David Jones, and Megan Zwick. And you can listen again to this show on the CBC Listen app. And like Cody, you can watch us on YouTube on demand at CBC Vancouver. And yes, do tune in tomorrow. CBC will have special coverage of Remembrance Day ceremonies. And all of our coverage for the ceremony begins at 10:55 a.m. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back with you on Monday.